All right, we're live. Jess, welcome to the show.
Hello.
I thought we might start at the very start. I was reading some of your blog articles on the Inner Fight website, and it said the girl that was born extremely sick and dangerously premature. So
Yes.
let's start there.
So my mum, when she was pregnant, she wasn't showing at all, and she thought it'd be a good idea to go sledging in the snow, and she came off, and so I was born at 28 weeks, very early.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I was in like special baby care for a long time. I had a hole in my heart, like deflated lungs, and they brought a priest into the hospital to bless me because they didn't think I was going to make it. So quite a traumatic start to life.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. Okay. And then I've done my research. So I heard you I heard part of a podcast where you were talking with a guy, and you were, I think it was at the age of 13 or 14, you were on like a triathlon elite training school with the Brownlees.
Yes.
Can you tell us how that came about at such a young age? How did you get to that point? And then what was that like?
Well, my mum had me competitive swimming from before I could walk. Well, not competitive, but got me swimming before I could walk. And then I got into competitive swimming, competed at like national level in Great Britain. And I then, by mistake, got into the school cross country team and ended up going to like the regionals and nationals for school cross country, having never run before. And while I was at the school cross country, I was approached by a talent scout from British Triathlon who asked me to come along to a weekend, like a trial weekend in Manchester. And I had no idea what triathlon was actually at that time. And when I arrived on a mountain bike in Manchester, the Brownlee brothers were both there. And so was Vicky Holland, who then went on to get an Olympic gold medal. So it was, yeah, that's how I met them. And that's how I started my journey with British Triathlon. Because after that weekend, they basically said, okay, you're on funding. Here's money, here's a bike, here's a wetsuit. You're now a triathlete. And I was like, wow, I never even knew what this sport was.
And that
And
was, you were 13 at that time, were you?
I think I was about 13 or 14. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
So you're
suddenly I was
obviously
like,
pretty talented at that age already.
I think I'd swum a lot. Like swimming was my thing. And obviously having that cardiovascular endurance there and then getting into running that way. I wouldn't say that I was particularly good at cycling at that time, but with triathlon, it's draft legal when you're elite. So I think they picked up on that and was just like, wow, we could help this girl in the future, like go forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so from that moment, you threw yourself into triathlon training.
Yes, overnight I switched from being a swimmer to a triathlete. And I was lucky and fortunate enough to be supported by British Triathlon. Like they had a youth development squad and like a program to like funnel into future Olympic Games. And I was in that squad and on that program for many years.
Okay. What was the training like in those days? Were you doing like tons of hours every week at that point?
The funny thing is back then, this makes me sound so old, is we didn't have any data points. So all we did was run off field and cycle off field. And okay, swimming, we had a clock, so we knew. But it's so different from today when everything is so data driven. It was like, go out for a 2-hour run. You've got no idea what pace you're running, what your heart rate is, or even how far you're going. It's just, you just do feel. So it's so different today with coaching and training yourself and having so much data. Yeah.
Yeah. So from that point, you got into triathlon. Ultimately, you represented Great Britain, right, at triathlon?
Yes. Yeah. So I represented Great Britain. Within that first year, it was the youth relays in the European youth relays. So I was like, wow, I've just found the sport and already I'm representing my country. This is pretty cool. Like I like this sport. Yeah. And then went on to that, the junior and then the under 23 and then the senior level.
Okay. How was that experience? Amazing or?
It was absolutely incredible. It was really good experience. And it's actually why I chose to go to Loughborough University so that I could be part of the squad because the squad was based there. So I chose my degree basically around wanting to be with the Great Britain triathlon team.
Okay. Did I see that you lived in Australia for a while?
Yeah, I decided when I finished my A-levels, this is before Loughborough, that I was going to take a gap year to Australia and train with the University of Western Australia triathlon team. I thought that would be a great way to have a gap year, but still keep up my training and away from everybody else as well, and then come back to the UK to finish my degree.
Was it a good experience over there?
It was, yeah, it was the best experience. And I ended up deferring my degree another year because I wanted to stay there longer. And the training out there I learned a lot as an athlete out there. It was very different from the UK. And I basically came home because I didn't have a visa anymore.
Yeah. Okay. I've heard, I can't remember who it was, to be fair. I've heard someone else moved out there for a while, and they were talking about like the mentality of the Australians, and that like the mentality around sport is quite different to what it is in the UK and probably other countries. Did you find that? Was it a more supportive, encouraging, motivational environment?
Yeah, for me, what I felt the difference was in the UK, sport is looked at as a hobby. That you have your whole life and everything else first, and then sports on the side. Whereas I found even at a really young age, as a teenager in Australia, the focus was sport is everything, and other things are on the outside. So the volume of training was something I'd never experienced before. I remember one of my first ever track sessions there. It was on a grass track. Was 4,400s.
Wow.
And, yeah. And I was like, what am I getting myself into?
Okay. All right. At some point as well, I read on your website, at some point after university, I drove around America for a month, living out my car. Was that just for the experience?
I can say there was no training done during that time.
Okay.
Yeah, that was just I did we do like Camp America. So I went out to the US to work for a couple of months, working as a mountain bike instructor on a children's camp. And then when it finished, I decided to take a month to see the US. So I just drove around the US and tried to see as much as I could in that time.
Okay. I know at some point you transitioned to like a focus on CrossFit from triathlon. Why did that happen? How did that happen? Can you talk about that some more?
Yeah, so I moved to Dubai when I finished university. I wasn't sure where I really wanted to go career-wise, and my mum was out here at the time. So I came out to Dubai, fell in love with it immediately. And at the time, triathlon was taking a bit of a back burner in my life. Long story, but basically the politics in British triathlon kind of pushed me away a little bit. During that time, like the 2008 and 2012 Olympics, they were really focused on not taking necessarily the top 3 triathletes in the country, but taking one triathlete and what we call domestiques. So 2 athletes that are only there to work for the first place. So they didn't necessarily have to be triathletes, the second and third place for the Olympic Games. They could just be a swimmer, and then they would drop out after the swim. And because of that, I felt like I was missing out on Olympic selection. And obviously it's like a 4-year cycle. So after the next 4 years and it happened again, and I missed the Olympic selection, I kind of started to think, right, maybe I need a break from this. I'm not enjoying it anymore. I'm chasing this Olympic dream and it's not quite happening. And that was all happening around the same time that I moved to Dubai. Right. And then when I moved to Dubai, I found strength training, which as a triathlete we did, but to be honest with you, I didn't take it seriously at all. I would just do it to tick boxes, to be like, okay, typical endurance athlete, don't need to be doing any strength, just need to be out there pounding the pavement a bit more. And I had that kind of mentality, but that really switched when I moved to Dubai. And there was a fitness competition in Dubai, which actually was CrossFit. And I thought, oh, I'll do that for fun. It's something to do. And then I did really well in it. I think I came second, but I was learning to snatch in the warm-up with the PVC pipe. And I'd never done one before, things like that. And typical Dubai, they gave us huge prize money. So I was like, this, again, I was like, wow, I like this sport. It's pretty cool. And then it kind of snowballed from there. So then the direction kind of changed to learning to do a pull-up, learning to squat heavy, really shifted into more strength training and CrossFit.
Was it that CrossFit competition that that sparked the strength training? Like you said, it sort of happened when you went to Dubai, or was there something else that made you like appreciate the need for strength?
So what I never really, luckily, had an injury or anything that made me think, wow, I need to do strength training. But towards my last year at university, I actually started dating, who I'm still with now, 14 years later, a powerlifter. And he was like, what do you mean you can't squat like your body weight, or you can't do a pull-up? And he thought it was ridiculous that someone so fit was so weak. So he was the one that kind of showed me the light of strength training. But it wasn't until I got to Dubai where I actually took a back step from endurance training and just focused on strength.
Okay. So then when was this? Like, when did you do your first CrossFit comp?
It would have about 10 years ago.
Okay. All right. This you mentioned in the prize money, by the way, like it's even happening in HYROX, isn't it now? It's like the only one outside of the majors, at least, where there's prize money.
Yeah. So both the Dubai HYROXs had prize money. And then the one in like 7 weeks in Doha has announced 3 times the amount of prize money. It's crazy.
Yeah. So CrossFit, how did that go? Like, I know, so you've got a world record, I know, in the triple three.
Yes.
Okay. So
triple three, it is.
Tell us what that workout is.
It's a 3-kilometer row into 300 double unders. So that's when the rope passes under your feet twice every jump, and then a 3-mile run on the true form.
Okay.
Which is
where did you do tough. That? Was that
was in Madrid? So it's the CrossFit regionals in Madrid. I think that was 2018.
Okay. What was your time?
Honestly, I can't remember. But when they announced, no, honestly, I can't. But when they announced that workout, I was like, wow, I've just been given this on a plate, like, because I was expecting like 1 rep max snatch or bar muscle ups and things like that. And they announced this endurance event. I was like, this is amazing. Like the year that I qualified to go, they give me an event like this. So it was very exciting.
We'll have to find out the time, because I'm sure there'll be people listening to this that think, I'll give that a go.
Yeah. And I know I've done it again outside and done it much, much faster, because the 3-mile on the true form is pretty nasty.
Yeah.
And that was I'd like to do it now, actually, because that was when I was doing no running training at all, because it was all just CrossFit focus. So it'd be interesting to do it. I have a lot less muscle now than I used to, and I just say I'm running a bit more.
Okay. So what level did you get to in CrossFit?
So in CrossFit, we have like you have the CrossFit Open, and then you back in those days you don't have it anymore. But now, if you're the top like 2% in the world, you get to go to like the CrossFit regionals, and then if you come top 5 in the CrossFit regionals, you go to the CrossFit Games. So I got to the CrossFit regionals twice.
Okay.
So pretty nice. High level. Yeah.
Do you still CrossFit alongside like HYROX training and whatever else you're doing?
Yeah. So CrossFit has been the basis of my training basically for the last, I would say, 10 years. My focus was competing just in CrossFit. So I was going around the world competing in CrossFit competitions. Really wasn't doing any endurance work. But then this time last year, when the CrossFit Open was on last year, I really badly dislocated my shoulder doing the CrossFit Open. And that's kind of changed my perspective a bit, because now I can't snatch as heavy as I used to. I can't do ring muscle ups anymore because it just comes back out. So that's kind of been the change in my life in the last year, and it's actually how I found HYROX.
Okay. So you've obviously there's endurance within CrossFit, but you've maintained a good level of endurance to be able to come and do what you've done in HYROX, like without specifically training for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think there was a stage where I didn't run at all, and I retested my 5K. I did a 5K race. And I know that I hadn't done any running for like a year, say, and I was still pretty close to my 5K PB. But then that's for 5K. It definitely really changes. The power curve changes when you start looking at like 10K, half marathon. But I think, because CrossFit, obviously, you get 20-minute workouts, you get 15-minute workouts. So you've got that kind of, but I think more long distance running would be a bit of a different story.
Oh. I was going to ask it anyway, but what is your 5K time?
Ever or now?
Now.
Um, so I did, when did I last run a 5K? I think about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and I did 19:14.
Okay.
So nowhere near as fast as I used to be, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Nice. So at some point you found HYROX, presumably, and so that was around that time of that injury where you were just like, CrossFit's off the cards now. What else can I do? Is that basically what happened?
Yeah, so because I couldn't use my arm for a long time, so I actually, part of my job is I coach triathletes. I'm an endurance coach as well as a CrossFit coach. So I basically just started doing more with my athletes. I started going out cycling with them a little bit more. Started swimming because swimming was good for my shoulder, and doing runs. And I was doing that alongside CrossFit, but obviously very different CrossFit to what I was used to, a different strength training because of my shoulder. And then they announced in Dubai, this is in like September last year, that there was going to be a HYROX. And I keep getting all these messages being like, oh, Jess, HYROX is perfect for you. It's CrossFit and it's running. This is everyone's perspective. Yeah. But yeah, that's how I ended up entering last year and doing my first HYROX.
Did you instantly love it?
Yes. I was like, and I did agree with people. I was like, this is actually made for me. I've got element of what I do, both aspects of sports that I do together combined. And I liked it because I felt like these stations were enough to slow pure runners down, and the stations were easy enough, but for CrossFit athletes, they couldn't run 8K. It's way too far for them. So I felt like I kind of been hybrid training for years anyway. So I kind of felt like, oh, okay, I haven't specifically been training for HYROX, but it's what I do. So I was like, yeah, it's perfect for me. And I did. I really enjoyed it. And what was great with that first one is Lauren Weeks and Michaela Norman both there. So so I was like, okay, I'm not doing it to be competitive, but I've seen these girls and I've just raced against these girls, and I think I can do it too. So it's kind of inspiring to see them in that first race as well. Knowing that they were like the top, you know.
Yeah. What was your time there?
107.
Okay. All right. Nice.
Yeah, and it was like anyone, you have no idea what you're getting yourself in for. Like
I was going to ask, did anything like catch you by surprise? Like, you're obviously experienced athlete, but did anything shock you in that race?
Everything shocked me. Like I didn't think running compromise would be that bad. The sled was heavier than I thought. And the one that shocked me the most was the burpee broad jump. My heart rate was absolutely through the roof. And then I remember trying to run and thinking, how are they running? Like, I need to walk. It's like and then another one that shocked me that first time, in CrossFit, I've always loved wall balls. I'm quite tall, and I think I can just go all day on wall balls. And there's a CrossFit workout called Karen, which is 150 wall balls, and I would do that unbroken. So I was like, oh yeah, 100 wall balls, that's fine for me, no problem. Shock of my life when I got to this wall balls for the first time. I think I did 10 and dropped the ball. There's like nothing left in the legs at that time. So that shocked me that first time for sure.
Yeah, I've heard that quite a few times actually. People that can do Karen unbroken and then just come in and just can't do it. It's crazy the difference. Yeah. I wanted to ask about like that transition going back from like triathlon to CrossFit, like strength training. How did you find that transition, and was there any like, I don't know, have you got any tips for anyone in that position? Because I feel like there's probably a lot of people in a similar position right now that maybe are transitioning from like triathlon to HYROX or other strength-based activities that might be listening to this. Have you got any tips for them in that regard?
In the strength training?
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is not to neglect it, because when you're trying to do running and strength or endurance and strength, you always kind of seem to prioritize what you think is more important, which is the running. And I did it for many years. But then I went through a phase of now to prioritize the strength. I've spent years building my running base. Me spending a few months prioritizing my strength is not really going to affect my run too much. But what it actually did do was help my run in the long run. And also, I think with strength training, it takes longer to see progression and to gain strength. Like going through a strength block and seeing that you're getting stronger is such a long process. Whereas when you're running, I feel like the gains come faster and you see the progress faster. So people tend to do a period of weight training and then think they're not getting anywhere and stop. But I mean, for example, I remember the first time I tried to do a pull-up and I was using like all the bands and there was still nothing happening. I still wasn't able to pull myself up. And that's quite demoralizing, but you know, like now I'd confidently do 10 or 15 strict pull-ups unbroken. So it's just about the long game, I think. And I think strength is super important in HYROX too. Yeah.
Do you feel like it's probably not as important as in CrossFit, right? Like, would you agree with that? And
yeah, I think because I mean, in CrossFit, I was a weaker athlete in terms of strength. There's some really strong girls out there. So, and obviously, if you look at HYROX, the majority of the time is spent running. But if you're not strong, those stations can, like you know, will definitely catch you out.
Yeah.
And also, I always look at the strength as well. Sorry, is like also like it's like prehab. If you're stronger and you're trying to do a lot of running, it's going to be better for you. You're going to be less likely to get injured as well. So looking at it from that angle as well as the stations.
Yeah. How about the nutrition side of things? Did you have to think differently about that at all, or not really?
I found because when I did back in the day when I did triathlon, no one ever told me how to eat properly. It just wasn't a thing. Again, it makes me sound so old. But it was only really when I got into CrossFit that I realized for fueling. And because I coach endurance athletes and I still do cycle quite a bit now and do stuff with them, I'm quite aware of the fueling. I'd say that it's quite similar because I feel like you need quite a lot of carbohydrate for short, sharp, intense workouts. And then you also obviously need a certain amount of carbs for super long endurance work. But HYROX is a weird one because it's like super intense, but for a long time. So like, you know, like sometimes I think, oh my God, I think I'm in zone 5 for like an hour. And it's like, how is that even possible to be? So you've got the intensity that I'm used to for like 10 minutes, but dragging it out over an hour long. It's next level. I actually do. Somebody said, I think it was Hunter did a podcast recently, and he was like, I can't believe people eat in the middle of a HYROX. And I was like, I can't believe people don't. Like, how do you get through an hour of that intense work without taking something on? Like, to me, I definitely need something in a race.
What do you have? I know people are always interested in this. So
I just take a gel because it's the easiest thing. And usually I'll do that after the burpee broad jumps or on the row because you're sitting down on the row, you've got a bit more time. But I had one in my pocket in DC and I didn't have chance to take it. Okay. So my race nutrition failed on that day.
I want to talk about DC in a minute, but before that, you'd only done 2 races in Dubai. Yeah. Well, first question, like we spoke at DC airport, and you said like the difference in that second event in Dubai was crazy, like in terms of how much it had grown, right?
Yeah, the participation was crazy. Yeah. The first time it was people had no idea what HYROX was, and I think that they were really clever with their marketing, and you know they had the 360 camera, and everyone was talking about it after the race, and because there was only was it like 3 or 4 months between the races, that it was enough to keep people engaged. Like, oh well, if I want to sign up for the next one, it's only 3 months away or 4 months away. So it was enough time for people to train, and it just grew and grew. And I don't know if it was including spectators, but I don't know if it was the footfall, but I think there were 6,000 people in the last one, which is quite big over one day.
Can you see that sort of growth continuing out in Dubai? Is there like quite a big fitness community that are going to buy into it?
I think it's going to get bigger for the next one, because even like my inbox and Instagram's gone crazy. Like, can you coach me? Like, when's the next one? And even where I work now, we specialize in CrossFit and endurance. And now I've got like a whole group of people that want to just do HYROX training. Like they want to set up classes and like training sessions and stuff. So, and we didn't have that before this last one. So I feel like the next one's going to be even bigger, which is great. Very exciting.
There's I think anyway, always like stuff to be gained from experiencing HYROX, and you'd only done 2 races up to DC. Do you feel like there's still gains to be made just from purely experiencing it?
Yeah, like I feel like I know nothing, right? I feel like I just did this race without specifically training for it, and was like, oh wow, and then just I was offered the chance, obviously, because I was in the Elite 15 to go to DC. And I was like, well, I'm not going to turn it down, even though I know nothing about what I'm going to be doing. And so I feel like I've got so much to learn in terms of experience in like the future races, but also, to be honest, like I need to start training for HYROX, like properly. I need to go all in if that's the direction I want to go in.
Okay.
Because I feel like if I've just been doing my own kind of little bit of CrossFit here, a little bit of running here, and I've managed to do this, then what if I actually put my mind to it and said, no, I think I can do HYROX. So I feel like I've got such a long way to go physically and experience-wise as well.
Yeah.
Which is cool. It's exciting. Right.
Yeah. So just in case people aren't aware, so the DC that we're talking about, so you qualify for the elite race major in DC relatively recently. How did that go for you? How was that experience?
It was an experience. My goal going in, honestly, was to experience it. Like to my 3rd ever HYROX race. Like no idea. Like I knew the grid, obviously I've seen it on TV and stuff, but I didn't know what that was going to be like to race in a grid format or to race against that level of the top level of girls. Also, like I'd never really traveled that far in that short notice to compete, not for many years, not since I was a triathlete. So I really had no idea how I was supposed to feel or how I was going to feel in terms of jet lag and things like that. So I learned a lot. I learned that I really need to go to a race like that a lot longer before. And I never, that's the first time I've ever raced in that grid format. First time I've met most of the girls. So one of the things I learned as well is I mean, as commentators, I hear you guys say this all the time, but not to get caught up in the buzz of everything in that first 1K. And before the race, I was like, Jess, just, stay calm. You do not have to run as fast as everyone else. Just do your own thing. And then what did I do? I was like, oh, everyone's running really fast.
It happens to everyone.
Yeah. And then I think the hardest thing for me to swallow up for DC was I arrived in DC like 48 hours before the race, and I felt fine. Like I slept really well. I went out for a walk and I felt good. I did like a little shakeout run. And I was like, oh, I feel great. Like I don't feel any different than I did 3 weeks ago when I raced Dubai. I guess 3 weeks isn't that long, but it wasn't until I got off the ski and started the second run, and I thought there's something wrong. There's something wrong with me. Like I don't feel like I've got anything. Like I feel like I'm empty already. So then DC for me became one of the hardest things, the hardest thing I've done mentally for a long time, because it was, although you're performing way under what you expect of yourself and what you know you're capable of, you still have to give 110%. So it was a big experience that way as well.
Do you feel like that was really just because of like the time difference, the travel, the jet lag, like arriving relatively close to the race, just a combination of those things?
I think it has to be, because I didn't feel bad until I started the race. Like that day before, I felt great. I was excited. My body felt okay. But and then I spoke to other people, and I actually spoke to like Megan and people like that from when they travel to Europe, and they said, yeah, sometimes they suffer really bad, but they don't know until they start racing, and they just think something's not right. I can feel a bit flat. And then other times they can just get away with it and they feel good. So I kind of asked the girls that travel a lot if they had the same experience. Dubai was only 3 weeks before, but I think that was enough time to like recover and then travel.
It was. I mean, it's even more travel for you from Dubai than it was like from me from the UK, for example. It was a long journey and more time difference as well, right?
Yeah, it was. I actually have to catch 2 flights. So I caught like a 3-hour flight from here to Saudi Arabia, and then it was I think on the way there it was like a 13 or 14 hour from Saudi to Washington, and then the time difference was like 9 hours. So I guess it was probably would have had a massive impact on me. Yeah.
You mentioned before that like there's a lot to be gained if you train specifically for HYROX. Are you going to do that?
Yes. Yeah. I think that was another thing that I took away from DC. It was kind of like an experience. Like, what do you feel from this experience? Is this something that you want? Is this something that you want to chase and go after? Is this the focus going forward? And I think that DC kind of helped me solidify that, because I really enjoyed it and I really had fun. And I left feeling like I had so much more that I'm capable of and to give. So let's do it. Let's look at next season, because like this season, I never even knew it was a season. I just joined right at the end. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah.
So let's talk like we talked about your 5K sort of time. Where are you at in like running volume in a week? Or maybe I should say like if you are training specifically for it, what are you planning on doing?
Well, I need to increase my run volume. So really, honestly, for the last year or so, the company that I work for, we have a community track session on a Tuesday morning, and I've just been doing that. So I've just been doing a track session, maybe 6 to 7K every Tuesday. That's all the only really running I've been doing for the last year or so. So in between, so in between the first HYROX and the second one in Dubai, I added in a long steady run at weekends. So I was running like twice a week, like maximum 10 to 15K on the weekend, and then a track session on a Tuesday. So that's generally my running plan has been recently. So, and I would say that running is probably my weakest aspect of HYROX. So now I need to really start to gradually increase that volume, add in more runs, more compromise runs, just more volume. My volume is just so low, especially when I listened to a podcast the other day and some of the girls said they were doing like 60 to 80K a week. I was absolutely gobsmacked at that. I was like, oh my God, I'm only doing one track session a week.
I was just going to say, like, you talk about like low hanging fruit or like the benefits of training specifically for it. If you go from 20K a week to that sort of level, then
that's going to be my biggest change, I think, and trying to increase that run volume without letting my strength and CrossFit drop, because I think that's equally as important to not get weaker at that, basically.
Yeah, I think you are one of the stronger athletes in that field. What can you squat or deadlift? Do you know?
My max deadlift is 162 kilos for 1 rep. And my max back squat is 110. I would say that I haven't tested it recently. I would say that I've got a lot weaker in the last year since my shoulder injury, because I've stepped away from a little bit from like trying to be stronger for CrossFit, and I stepped more like lighter weights, higher reps, as part of my rehab process, to be honest.
Yeah. You're very good on the ergs as well, I think. Is it like your 2K? I've got written down 712 2K on the row and 725 on the ski. Is that right?
Yeah, that row was actually in a CrossFit competition with big prize money again, and it was literally 2K row for time. That was it, and then do it as fast as you can, and here's loads of money kind of pain. Yeah, I really do like the ergs, and I don't know whether I know I have an advantage because I'm super tall compared to other girls, but I think being tall, you've got that advantage, and also because I'm tall, I'm a bit heavier than the other girls. So I think that's where my advantage comes from on the ergs.
Are you with your shoulder? Are you okay on the ergs and wall balls? Like, is that holding up for those?
Yeah, no, it feels really good for that. I mean, it's actually okay. Like I can clean and, I mean, I used to clean and jerk 100 kilos. Nowadays I go to like 50 or 60, and then my shoulder gets a bit niggly. So I'm still able to push like 50 or 60 kilos over my head. It's just being aware not to try and push those super heavy weights anymore.
So you're a coach. If you think about your running training or what the running training might look like in terms of like a split between like easy zone 2 work, like tempo work, intervals, do you feel like that would look broadly the same as if you were doing triathlon, or would you change that in any way for something like HYROX?
The only thing I would change is obviously I would probably add in like a compromise run session, but I would still try and have like a track session, a tempo session, and then a long slow duration like aerobic one or two, zone 1 or 2 run, like longer. With triathletes, obviously, I mean, they do runs off the bike, which is kind of like a compromise run. But I would say the structure would be very similar, like trying to get the tempo, the track, the long. Yeah, very similar.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I would. It was going to be the same, trying to build up that volume. The other thing is, though, obviously, with like concurrent training is I would really, with my triathletes, I try and plan their sessions so that they don't have like a really heavy session in the morning and then they run in the afternoons. I just think like by shortening the muscle by doing like strength training, it's just I feel like you're more likely to get injured if you then go and do maybe not so much a long steady run, but if you try to do a tempo or a track session, for example. So just structuring the way you do it to reduce the risk of injury as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. If you were going to do a day like that, like 2 sessions where there is strength work and endurance work on the same day, would you always do it that way around, like strength work first in the morning, endurance in the afternoon, or does it not matter?
As a triathlete, I would have probably done it that way around. I would have done strength in the morning, running in the afternoon. But nowadays, I think I would do it the other way. I would run in the morning and do strength in the afternoon. I feel like I'm better at strength training when I have several meals in me, as opposed to the morning sessions when I've been awake a bit longer. I feel like I get more out of it. I feel like I can lift heavier in the afternoons as opposed to the mornings as well. But I think there's something to be said for mixing that up. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer which should come first, strength or running in one day, for example. I think it depends on the type of run that you're going to be doing.
Have you changed your mind on anything like training for HYROX? I mean, it's relatively short time in the sport that you've had in reality, but like, have you changed your mind on anything? Like now you've experienced 3 races, is there anything you're like, no, I need to do? Is it more compromise work that maybe you think you need to do or something like that?
I just realized how little I run. Honestly. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is I only from speaking to the other girls as well and being like, oh, how do they do that? Like 60 to 80K a week. I think that's the biggest one.
Yeah, right. Mindset in the race. Where does your mind go when, during a tough hour like that? Is there anything you think about?
I've always had this really weird ability to like flick a switch, and as soon as the race starts, like I don't notice anything around me. I don't hear any music. I don't know any people. Can't see any people. And even on that first race in Dubai, I was very much like that. Like I didn't even know where I was. I didn't know where the other girls were. I changed that a little bit on the second HYROX that we did in Dubai, because it was me and Jade Skillen out in front, and it was like cat and mouse the whole race. So I'd be ahead, she'd be ahead, I'd be ahead. It was basically me getting out the stations first and then her running me down every time. So I was really aware of somebody else. So my mentality in that race was just this between me and Jade, like this just cat and mouse. And as long as I'm giving it my absolute all. DC was really challenging mentally because I was feeling so bad and feeling like I was giving everything and nothing. Like, I mean, for example, like I remember on the burpee broad jumps at one stage, like just laying down for like a couple of seconds, and my judge is like, "What do you like? Get up!" And I was thinking to myself, "Jess, that's not you. That's so not you." Like, so then the battle for me in DC was, it doesn't matter how you're performing as long as you're doing every single thing you can, like as long as you're giving 110%, then there's nothing more you can do. And the factors that are affecting you, you have no control over right now. So I guess that it shifts from race to race, really.
Okay. What's your plan? Are you going to do the last chance qualifiers at all?
So I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's really like, I really want to do them because I've obviously qualified for the world champs in age group. So my plan is already that I'm going to Nice. Like, I've already taken the time off work and things like that. But it's only been the last three weeks that I've suddenly realized, well, I have a shot at being in the elite 15. Like, I don't have to go do age group. But then I sat down and like spoke to my boss and my partner and my friends, and like, my choice is that I either go to Germany in like 3 weeks time, but I don't feel like I'm ready to race in Germany because DC took a lot out of me. I had a week when I got back from DC where I didn't really train because I was sick and I was jet lagged and all this. And that only gives me now like 2 weeks of training before I potentially have to travel to Germany. So I was like, I don't think I'm going to be ready for Cologne. And then I thought, well, I can get a nice good block in and be ready for California, for Anaheim. I've got time to do that. I can maybe go a week earlier and maybe try and beat this jet lag, and I don't know, all these things going in my head. And but then California is only 2 weeks before Nice. So I still 2 weeks after DC, I still felt terrible from the jet lag. Like, there's no way I could go and do a good HYROX race 2 weeks post all that travel. So then I'm thinking to myself, is my goal to go to California or Germany just to qualify, and then doesn't matter if I come 15th at Worlds, or is my goal to do really well at World? You know, like all these thoughts there. So I haven't really come to a decision yet. And a lot of people around me are saying you didn't even know this was a possibility this year, right? So just go to World Champs as the age group and do a really good race, and then look at next season, look ahead. And it's kind of like, the advice I always give my clients is, stop wanting things right now. Stop wanting like this instant gratification. And then I realized that I'm doing it. I'm just like, I'm going to DC, I'm going to Cologne, I'm going to Anaheim. But I don't think it's physically possible for me. Like, my body is not going to cope with it. And I think DC taught me that massively. Yeah. But there's still that part of me that's like, if the chance is there for you to be in the elite 15, then why are you going to chase it? Go and chase it. Go and get it. You know, like, even though I joined the party very late this year, essentially.
Yeah. I get it. Like, I can see it's a difficult decision. No shame in going to the age groups and doing world champs, you know.
No, not at all. Like, that was always the plan, was to go and try and do well in my age group at world champs. But then when this carrot gets dangled in front of you of the elite 15, it's kind of like, I want to be part of that as well.
Yeah. There's even like for a lot of the elites, like chasing getting a spot in the majors and getting a time to get a spot in the majors and then racing in the majors, like the difference for those athletes compared to, you know, those who managed to qualify in the very first major in Chicago for Nice, like in 8 months' time or whatever it was, like it's a big difference, isn't it, to just how your season is set up and everything like that.
Yeah, because I feel like now I'm like, yeah, like basically I could go to Germany and California and then Nice, but oh my God, how is my body going to react to that? But it's so tempting to chase it. Yeah.
Nice problem to have.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I suppose I should listen to my own advice and look at, okay, I had a fantastic first ever experience of HYROX in the last couple of months. Like, what am I going to do next year? What's my app? Because I never had any goals this year. It was just do a HYROX to see what it's like. Maybe it'd be nice to actually sit down and say, this is what I want to do next year, and actually have the races already planned out of what I'm going to do. And I think my friend, obviously I raced against Jade Skillen from the UK. She's really good at that. Like, she obviously qualified for DC, but didn't go because she was like, it's not in my year plan. My year plan was never this. And she's actually racing pairs in world champs in Nice because that's her plan. And then now she's looking at next year. I want to be in the elite 15. I was like, yeah, she's right. Like, she knows what she's talking about.
Funnily enough, I don't want to go too off topic, but like I was interviewed recently and someone was asking me like, what what some of the elites do differently and everything like that. And I said, I think one thing that, from my perception, that Hunter does very well. I mean, obviously he's like amazing in every regard, but I think he structures his season very well. And he talked about stock after Stockholm, he was still in like beer drinking season, and he doesn't like, and he's still like done amazingly there. But like, I think he structures his season very sensibly. Like he has a proper off season and doesn't get too specific until like too like close to the event and everything like that. I think he's more sensible about it than maybe a lot of people are, just from my perception.
And the older I get, the wiser I get. And I think, you know, part of me wants to chase all these things. The other part of me is like, you've got to listen to your body. If you want to go somewhere next year, it starts now, basically. But I haven't made a decision yet. Just in case.
See you in Cologne. What's your like, you've done a lot in sport over your life. Does anything jump out as like the best experience that you've ever had in sport?
We did no. I mean, in triathlon, to me, triathlon seems like such a long time ago now. But then there was some really cool experiences, like the World University Champs. I mean, that was great because you get to go with all your university friends and compete at the World Champs. But I think 333 at the CrossFit Regionals was a really big thing for me, because everyone watches the CrossFit Regionals, and CrossFit at the time is such a huge sport. And that was really cool. Another thing that people wouldn't even heard of is, obviously, being an Olympic distance triathlete, 10K was the distance that we ran. I never did ultra work. I never did long distance work. And then 2 years ago, my company we do it every single year, and it's called Into the Darkness. And as soon as the sun sets, we do 50K bike, 50K run, and then 50K bike. And the goal is to be finished before the sun rises. So you do it through the night, and it's actually in the middle of the desert in Dubai. So you have no lights, no sound, so it's into the darkness, like mentally and physically. So I did that 2 years ago, and 50K for me was like serious stuff. I just trained for 10K my whole life. So that was quite that's one of my top achievements as well.
Okay. Wow.
And another cool one, actually, I just remembered, I was the first ever woman to compete uncovered in Saudi Arabia. That's a cool one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the event that they let us uncover for in front of men, and it was in a public space, was a 3 rep max overhead squat, but you had to snatch it from the floor. And I won the event. So I'm finishing the event, I'm doing my last snatch, and there's like 6 deep men in the crowd, like screaming at me. And I just remember thinking, I stood there with the bar over my head when I finished, and I just thought, I am the first ever woman to compete without uncovered, basically, in Saudi. I thought that was incredible, like big step in there for females in sport, and especially in the Middle East. And
amazing, awesome. Okay, all right. You mentioned your company, like the Into the Darkness event. So you work at Inner Fight, yeah? So you're a coach?
Yes, I'm a coach at Inner Fight, and I'm super lucky because Inner Fight has 2 parts of the company. One part is CrossFit, and the second part is endurance. And it's separate coaches, separate parts of the company. But I am actually the only coach that has 2 jobs. So I'm a triathlete / endurance coach, and then I coach CrossFit as well. So I get the best of both worlds, which for me is perfect. It's like I'm in the middle of like this hybrid kind of training.
Nice. So where, if people want to like follow you, find out more about you, where should they go? Is it to Inner Fight, or is it to your Instagram? What should I do?
So my Instagram, I have links to Inner Fight on there as well. So my Instagram is just my name. It's Jess Towl. Everyone says towel, but it's not towel.
Okay. I probably said that on the commentary.
Yeah, that's a big joke that my friends have with me, because they know how much it irritates me.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I've never met anyone that said it correctly, so it's okay.
All right. Okay, all right. Well, this has been great. Excited to see what you can do. May see you in HYROX, Cologne or Anaheim, if not Nice.
Yes, definitely.
Anything else I should have asked? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think everything's good. Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck in whatever you do next. And thank you.
Just hopefully you'll just be seeing a lot more of me, hopefully, in the future.
Yeah,
Bit more running. Yeah.
All right. Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.